we're absolutely thrilled to have Monika and Andrew here today to talk a little bit more about what does it mean to have these programs and how have you managed to sustain them in such a successful way. So can I ask you, first of all, Andrew and Monika, to just say a little bit about your role in your organization and your understanding or connection with the mindfulness programs, and then I'll ask you some questions in the usual way. And as always, we'll be aiming to have some space at the back for us to be able to have some questions, so that you can send questions to Teresa. Teresa will curate the questions and send them to me so that I can ask the panel. And this is one of our 1-hour sessions rather than the breakout sessions. So that's what we'll be doing. So who would like to go first? Monika, would you like to introduce yourselves to the community first? Well, I think you're on mute at the moment, sorry. Great.
Thank you. My name is Monika Misra. I head up the Europe, Middle East and Africa region of health and wellbeing for GlaxoSmithKline. I'm a GP by background. My affiliation with mindfulness is on a personal level, a practice that I have carried out daily for years. And at work, I'm very a real advocate of the work that Razia carries out within the organization, attending her mindfulness series, in addition to promoting them, as well as being on her Train the Trainer program that is coming up when we are able to meet face to face again.
Great, thank you, Monika. And Andrew?
Yeah, my official role within Roche is head of talent acquisition. So all things kind of attracting and retaining talent in the organization and then recruiting it into the organization within the UK. And I also wear a couple of hats around championing diversity and inclusion in the organization, and set up within the UK division essentially our Google community for mindfulness meditation about 2 years ago. And we've been practicing mindfulness meditation within Roche globally for about 8 years. And its inception was on the West Coast in California for us. And yeah, practice daily. And yeah, it's good. I'm glad that Francisca's on the call. She's a practitioner and she's joining us from Roche as well today. So I'm delighted to have her here.
Brilliant. Thank you, Andrew. And I apologize for saying Roche. I always thought it was Roche. A complete mistake.
If you're in America, you'd say Roche.
Oh,
so,
I feel a bit better. Good. Yeah. Good. Okay, so Monika, can you perhaps say a little bit about how GSK has managed to make this a sustainable program?
Sure. The first thing I'd say is to start with our company mission, which is to enable people to do more, feel better, and live longer. And the mindfulness program for our employees is really about internalizing that mission for our employees so that they can feel at their best. And we know that when they feel at their best, they will perform at their best. And so that's really where it starts in terms of sustainability, is linking that to the company mission. As you know, Razia, very well, Razia is our fabulous subject matter expert for mindfulness at GSK. And I think it's important to have somebody who is an expert in the area. So somebody who is responsible for content, for delivery, for training, and for continuously seeking feedback so that we continue to improve the programs and make them relevant. And then it's about meeting the needs of the population. So what is it that employees want? Making sure that it's accessible to them. For example, we run our mindfulness series, which we have done for over 5 years now. We run them across different time zones, as we are a global company, to ensure that it is delivered at a time that's convenient to employees. We do live workshops. We also, for others who cannot make them or it's not convenient for them, have them available on demand. And we provide them as either open enrollments, you can join, anybody can join who doesn't know each other. We also offer programs for teams. So it's really about catering to the needs of the group. The other success factor is around regularity. rather than doing something as a one-off or every couple of months, it's about doing something that will nudge people regularly. So our series, which are themed, are made up of weekly sessions of different topics, and we do them in a block so that people know it's on at that same time every week for that duration of time. So it's really important that it's done in a way that enables people to develop a habit around mindfulness. I would also say that communication and promotion around mindfulness is the key. So people are aware of it, and people have materials available to promote it. So within the central team, and Shona's with us on this call, we have developed posters, plasma screen content. We've developed intranet material to advertise it, and we have certain films and videos that people can then locally bespoke and use to promote the work. The other aspect is about capacity. Do we have the capacity to meet the demand? Now, 5 years ago, there were about 35 people that came to our mindfulness series. Now we're in the thousands. So it's about building the capacity. Razia does not have the capacity to do this for all those number of people. So it's about making sure that you train up people that are really passionate about this. And so we have champions, and we have train the trainer programs to drive up training and make sure that we scale up according to demand. And finally, what I would say around sustainability is asking the employees what they want, getting data, getting insights of what do they want, what do they think about our programs. So, not only uptake and how many people come, but also did they value it? And we know from some of the analyses that we've done that almost 100% of people have said that they would recommend it to other people, have said they will come back. We have a significant number of people that say that it has improved their ability to manage stress, to perform, and we've had, in terms of business benefits, people saying that it's improved their productivity. So some really great results. So I think data and insights is, again, a success factor in sustainability.
Thank you, Monika. Wow, there's so much there. I could probably inquire for about an hour about any one of those, but I beg to give Andrew a go. So Andrew, what does any of that resonate? Does that ring true for you? Is there anything else?
Yeah, so to avoid repeating the same thing, let me maybe just pick out a couple of aspects and maybe nuances that to build on Monika's, because we're doing a lot of similar stuff. But this kind of red thread that was mentioned to the business mission is so critical at Roche. Is the well-being of the employees is absolutely critical to innovation and therefore business success for us. So there's no argument or excuses that we have to make for actually people spending time looking after themselves and practicing this sort of thing. So whatever we do, we try and encourage people not to feel guilty about personal development and purposeful practice, because we know that it's connected to the business success. So if you can make that argument and keep that communication, that red thread going, we feel that's a very powerful tool in sustainability. Just a couple of other things that we pick up. We have made Headspace as an application free for all employees within the organization, because again, it's about this, how do we make sure that employees can access it at the time and in the way that they want to. So we're absolutely convinced that group work keeps the momentum and is more likely to make people more sustainable in their practice. But obviously, Headspace is a great option, or any app really as an option, and we make that available freely to all employees to meet their times and their diary requirements. Absolutely would reinforce the consistency and the structure for people to allow momentum to their practice. And that includes regular kind of introductory sessions. So it can get quite easy to kind of go, oh, we're getting the same people turning up all the time, so let's move our practice on, or let's offer some deeper practice. So, but people come to it at their own time, right, when they're ready. And so having a regular introductory session for people is, again, we wouldn't underestimate that. So bringing new people into it whenever they're ready to join it. And I would say we really have a global network of champions and practitioners in the organization, as well as, we do outsource, some of our provision to ensure that consistency and quality and the rigor of what is offered to employees. But the global community is great because it allows more opportunity to access at different times for people. If in Switzerland they've got a practice going that's new, and we make that available to everybody globally via their calendars. What that also does, it allows for the collection and collation of really useful resources from around the world. If you've got a whole network of people that are accessing and finding really valuable materials, and then you can put it on singular kind of points of reference and access for employees, they can dip into that at a time that's suitable for them. So that just, you can't look at all the internet all the time, right? So having a network of people scanning that and finding really useful and powerful information, and then having a store for that is also useful. But otherwise, a very kind of similar approach.
Right, and I love that idea of sort of global and targeted. So for invitations to turn up in your diary, in your calendar, must make it also quite inviting, quite welcoming.
Yeah, at the start we had people going, what's this dropping into my diary? There was a lot of people going, what is this? And then so a lot of curiosity for it, in the first few months. But it's there. It's people haven't got to look for it. It's in their diaries. It's that's actually driven out of corporate affairs. So they have the whole wellbeing diary that they drop into all employees' calendars.
That's great, thank you. So if I can stay with you for a moment, Andrew, can you explore perhaps, obviously this lockdown business has been going on for a while, and I don't know about anybody else, but for me, it feels like there was a certain amount of energy at the start of it. Almost, I can get through this. This is going to be 3 months, and I knew intellectually that it wasn't going to be the same afterwards, but it was kind of like, I can push through this. And then there was a point where it was kind of like, whoa, this is really going on a bit. And I don't know if it was boredom or fatigue or what it was, but it felt like it changed. Have you felt something similar in your organization? And how have you maintained interest? Because we've heard already on some of these seminars that there's been a real peak in interest in mindfulness as the lockdown started, as the COVID sort of hit. And there was a real peak in interest. And how have you sustained that level of interest, if you have, if that's been sustainable?
We definitely saw a drop off as well. A peak of activity as well. Lots of people coming to it, and then there has been a drop off as well for us. We have had to really think about how do we, what are we putting in place to maybe people that tried it out maybe didn't get the outcomes they wanted, or maybe they felt some benefit, but now, as with a lot of practice, they might feel, oh, I've got the benefit out of that, I know what it's all about, so I don't have to do it anymore. So what we have done is, there's a couple of things that, again, slight nuances that we've kind of looked at. So we started to offer mindfulness for families as well. So we introduced the chance for employees that might be homeschooling to have sessions with their, that would be led by a guide that wasn't sitting in silence perhaps, but was encouraging mindfulness practice for children. And that was at different age groups and at regular intervals throughout the week. So that's helped, because that is the one service that has maintained its level of participation throughout. So that's been really useful. And then, interestingly, although we're not really a hierarchical organization, we found by encouraging people that others really look up to, and really see as kind of leaders within the organization, if their parts, if they are practicing, is to comment, is to make sure that they're kind of encouraging people around them to also. And we found that also has a kind of uptick or a return to practice for some people if they are, it's kind of that feeling a little bit guilty. It's easy now to kind of wake up in the morning, get on your, and the first thing that gets cut is maybe your morning practice, or maybe lunchtime. You're like, well, I'll just get on the calls. Everybody's doing hangouts. And it's just about leaders and constantly putting that message into the organization that nobody should feel guilty about maintaining their practice or whatever's serving them. So we're finding that we're having to kind of communicate that idea of self-care to make sure that they don't cut their practice. So those things have been helpful. But it's an up and down.
Yeah, thank you. And Monica, how's it been in your area with this? Has this been sustained, this sort of interest, this level of interest?
We have noticed that the COVID situation has raised the profile of mindfulness because I suppose we're collectively experiencing the same issues, such as fear and anxiety. So we've based our practices around those themes, knowing that we're all experiencing them together. I think that's why it's become more interesting to people to attend our sessions. So we've had a very good turnout of our COVID mindfulness series. So we haven't used previous themes. We've made it very specific and relevant to the situation. And so we have the sorts of themes that our practices have been based on are around how do you stay calm among this uncertainty? How do you deal with the fear that you're facing, for example? So there are several other topics, but we have made it relevant to the situation and therefore attractive to people to join. And we're finding some fantastic uptake of the programs during COVID.
And has it dropped off a bit as Andrew's described? Because one of the things which, and maybe this is just me, but every time I join a gym, I go very frequently for a while and then not so much.
I've been attending them myself, and when I look at the participant list, it doesn't look as if people have been dropping off. I think because we're still struggling with the same issues we were several months ago, it's becoming attractive to people, and because of the timing it's actually right at the beginning of the day. So it's ideal for people before they actually start to get into their inbox. They wouldn't typically be logging on at that time, and so we time it so it's a bit earlier than business hours, and it's across different time zones. So you can, and again, it's on demand also. So it's something that people can access at their convenience as well as together as a collective group. As I say, personally, I haven't noticed the numbers declining over the months.
So obviously there's so much to ask you, and I'm tempted to leave this question until the end, but if there was one trick, or trick is probably not the right word, but if there's one technique for maintaining sustainability in a mindfulness program, what would that be? What would be your takeaway to this community for today?
Is that to me first or Andrew?
Yeah. Why don't you go first, Monica?
It's hard to turn it to like just have one, but you're giving me a challenging task. I would say that we would do something which sounds very technical, but what we have started to do is something called a SWOT analysis. So you're looking at the strengths of the program, the weaknesses, the opportunities and the threats. Phew, I've remembered what they stand for. Success for today. So really, it's not only about celebrating what the strengths are and the successes are, it's looking for opportunities to continue that sustainability. So what is it that we can ensure that we do to make it relevant, etc. So we heard from Andrew about making it align to the priorities of the company. And similarly, for us, the opportunities are around aligning that to, for example, performance. How do we help people perform better? Maybe it's through delivering a session on focus, for example. So it's looking at the opportunities for the program going forward. And then when you think about the weaknesses, what are the weaknesses of the program? And then brainstorming solutions. How do you overcome those weaknesses so that you can put in place tactics or strategies to ensure that it stays robust and it stays relevant to the employee population?
Thank you. And as anybody who knows me well will know that the sounds of either a project plan or a SWOT analysis make me deeply happy. It's great to know the project management being delivered and applied to mindfulness. Fantastic. Andrew, what would your takeaway be?
Yeah, it's all just a fuzz in my brain. There's no there's no project plan. SWOT analysis. I need one. That's what I need. So what would I say on top of that would be, I think to look at the mind of the organization in the same way as an individual. So an individual's inertia to practice, right? As you say, once you get momentum, then so it's to think about and it'll be different for your organization dependent on what the size, structure, culture, working hours up, or whatever it might be. But to really think about how do we get the momentum going and then avoid that inertia from kicking back in. So think about whether that's structure, whether that's communications, or whether it's all of those things together. But putting in place, being mindful about that structure to keep that momentum going so that people can see the longer term benefits and outcomes of their practice, so that they would then remain committed to it. And that's not to say somebody doing one session is not a fabulous outcome, but the championing, the taking it into other aspects of work, the benefits that the ripple effect of those individuals practicing deeply has on the organization. So so just think about it. Practice is hard and effortful, and so your solution will suffer from that.
Thank you. I remember years ago being very dissatisfied about where I was working and dissatisfied with myself and not having changed my work. And I phoned a friend and I said, "Do you think people are naturally apathetic?" And he laughed. I said, "What are you laughing at?" He said, "I'm surprised you could be bothered to pick up the phone and ask the question." And it always strikes me that it is hard to keep things going, isn't it? It's hard.
And maybe hard isn't the word. It's neither hard nor difficult, but it needs to be earnest. I think. Yeah.
It's a great word. I'm going to come to the questions in a moment because we've got some fantastic questions coming through, and do keep them coming because we've got plenty of time. But there was one thing which I picked up on, which I wondered if you'd actually choose as your particular takeaway, which was around the link. I think you described it as a red thread, Andrew, to the mission of the business. I found that really fascinating. Can you say a bit more about that?
I can, and I'll take it maybe even a step further. Is we talk in our organization about transformation, and I'm sure other organizations are talking about transformation or agility or growth mindset, and so we're starting to see the opportunity to even link mindfulness as a useful tool by which to equip yourself fully to deal with the change of the future. And so that's not necessarily dealing with the pressures of a COVID environment, or this is the environment is changing all the time, and COVID is just a great example of where that has been forced upon us, and those that have been and it was great because we were ready for it. We had the structures in place that people felt they could deal with it, or were practicing well enough that they were able to cope with that. But the link to organizational success through transformation and dealing with uncertainty and change is a continuation of that red thread for us. So not just innovation and well-being of the organization, but genuinely the mindfulness underpinning our ability to move and flex and be agile to the changing environment.
Monika, is there anything else that you wanted to say around that idea of the link to the vision or the mission of the business?
Well, I think because everybody is familiar with the company mission, it's a really great place to start with when you're positioning a program like mindfulness. There are many people that are skeptical about it, or they don't really see how it links to business benefits. So it's important that, yes, as well as it's the right thing to do, and for some people they love mindfulness, it's also about how do you contextualize it in the corporate or the workplace environment. So starting with mission and purpose is very important. And we know that for many people that are looking for jobs, that are seeking employment, one of the things that's really important to them is a sense of purpose. And so if they can get that sense of purpose through the company mission, and then you can link whatever you do, such as mindfulness, to that company mission, it all seems to come together, as we heard from Andrew.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So much to think about there. We have got some great questions coming in, and a lot of them around leadership. So can I start with one question to Andrew first, which is, how have you got leadership sponsorship for the program? And for you, Andrew, first, and then to Monika.
I didn't really. I was very confident, in all of the comms and rhetoric that was coming from leadership, let's say, within the organisation, and we're not too hierarchical in Roche. Don't get me wrong, we do have a hierarchy, but if I hadn't been totally confident that what we were offering in terms of support structure programs underpinning organisational success through well-being, I wouldn't have done it. So, and I suppose that speaks of the kind of authenticity of our leaders, to also me feeling empowered to do it, or all the champions across the world feeling empowered to set this up. It's a very grassroots kind of structure that's built up across all these different geographies within Roche. So yeah, there wasn't really a request. It was
right.
Just felt very obvious and natural.
Okay, thank you. Monika?
We didn't target leaders specifically, but we do have an exec sponsor of health and well-being overall, who often promotes what we do, including mindfulness. All the products and services for employee health and well-being are promoted through him, as well as the mindfulness series. He recently did an interview with an employee that was broadcast about her struggles during the COVID situation and how she pulled upon certain programs. So it's not something that's orchestrated, but it often comes up through conversations or through promotions that we do through leadership. We have an open enroll. Our mindfulness series are very much open enrollment, and we started them off as face-to-face in our headquarters. And we did have certain leaders from parts of the business that came to that, and as a result, were real fans of it and then promoted it in their own organizations. With our programs, whether it's resilience or mindfulness, we often, that often happens that way, is that it resonates with somebody. Obviously one size doesn't fit all, but it'll be somebody who, whether they're a leader or where they are in the organization, they will benefit significantly from it and will want other people to do the same, and therefore will automatically start to promote it and become champions, if you like, in their parts of the business. And it has to be that way because, as Andrew said, it's got to come from the passion of the individual, as opposed to just somebody saying do mindfulness but not really believing in it or doing it themselves.
Absolutely. I suppose, and thank you, Tessa, for the question. We've had a previous seminar where we've looked at the value of leadership and having leadership sponsors, and certainly I think my experience was that having some seniority in the backing just helped overcome some of the cynicism and some of the barriers that people who may be sheepish to approach it felt, oh, this is legitimized by the senior leadership of the organization.
Yeah, and to just emphasize what Monica's saying, it's in the being of it, rather than the rhetoric or the communication. So it is turning up. It is, commenting on the communities. It is just being part of that rather than their role as a leader, and that just, because it's a felt experience by people then, rather than just a kind of told experience, and people respond much more to that type of, I think, leadership anyway.
Absolutely. And I suppose this is Karen Liebenguth. I'm guessing this is very much in the same area, and it may already have been answered. Do you want to ask your question, actually? Can we unmute you?
Yeah, thank you. I think, the first part of my question has already been answered, so thank you. And I was interested a little bit more in how, what has specifically happened to get leaders on board. And I think you've already said a little bit in this showing up and turning up. But again, sort of my interest is, because I think that's really difficult in organizations, how to make leaders show up. I know we can't make them show up, but something must be there in the culture that can happen, and leaders show up and become part of the community, because very often they stay sort of a separate group of people, which often creates that separation. So that would be great to hear a little bit more.
Thanks, Karen. Any thoughts on that? It feels like it might be almost a cultural answer, something in the nature of where you are.
I think the role of leadership is around, I don't really want to say this word, but permission. So enabling people, allowing people to feel empowered to do whatever they think will help them enhance their health and well-being, and as a result enhance their ability to do their job. So it's really around, having an employee feel like their manager is supporting them in looking after their health and well-being, whether that's mindfulness or going for a run or whatever that might be. So I think that's where they have a pivotal role in having those conversations with employees on a one-to-one and a group within their teams basis, and emphasizing the importance of everybody looking after themselves and getting the right balance between work and home. So when that expectation is set by leaders, then automatically people feel that they can attend programs, they can sign up to series, or to do whatever they need to do to be at their best. I think that's, for me, that's the main role of a leader, as opposed to having to attend a certain program. Having said that, it is nice to see people within your peer group or people that are more senior to you engaged in that, but I don't think that's a prerequisite. I don't think we should force that in an organization. I'm sure as people do feel the benefit of it, they will automatically start to attend, irrespective of their grade.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And if just one comment, yeah, maybe to what you were saying, Andrew, about a culture. I suppose when it comes to personal development, if we put this in that kind of growth space or personal development practice, I think we have quite an open and again authentic dialogue at all levels in the organization about what it is individuals are working on. You know, what is it that they are. So it's not seen as a kind of like, I'm a better meditator than you are, or because I'm a leader or something like that. You know, meditation might just be one part of somebody's practice that you can talk very adult to adult about, you know, whether you're early careers or whether you're this, you know, the CEO within Roche. So I know that a lot of the leaders in terms of perhaps seniority within the organization, they would not feel uncomfortable, you know, talking in a way that is, you know, unhierarchical when it comes to their personal development, and we encourage that. And because that's the culture of growth that we need to be working on. So it is a subtle, a thing that takes time. It is a cultural shift, as opposed to just saying to do what I do. It's like, I'm going to tell you that's what I'm doing, and hopefully that will move you to want to grow yourself.
And of course, it does occur to me that both of you are senior within this organization. So you are modeling this yourselves for your community, for your teams.
Well, I do find I sometimes have challenging conversations with the very senior leadership, because I feel comfortable having it, you know, in this space. But other things that I would never even dream of talking to, you know, the people about. So yeah, so I think you're right. There is also a level of comfort and that allows that conversation to happen as well. Where you know, whereas I know some people, unless they might see a barrier of hierarchy or seniority, you know, because it's within them that sense of somebody being more senior. But I don't count myself as senior within the organisation at all either. You know, we don't really have too much hierarchy, you know. So that helps as well. We literally don't have layers and layers of management to kind of worry about and to condition us to think, well, we must go up before we go down. You know, two layers, 2-3 layers, you know, is and again, so I shouldn't take that for granted at all. So that would be a structure that would perhaps potentially limit, or restrict practice. Yeah.
Thank you, Andrew. So Aaron's asked a great question around geography. Aaron, would you like to ask the question?
Sure. Hi, thank you. And this goes back to Andrew, you were saying around the kind of the initial process and the curiosity that was being created by, an email invitation being plonked in someone's inbox. I'm just wondering if either of you have seen, in terms of globally, are there differences in geographical locations in terms of any kind of resistance or uptake, kind of based on culture? And to give you some context on that, I'm finding a lot of resistance from part of the organisation that I'm in around the US, and the fact that in terms of mental health, there is a direct correlation between health insurance. So that's the kind of argument I'm being given at the moment, in terms of like, well, no, this all has to be kind of done in a different way than is easy in the UK. Have you noticed anything around different cultures?
Andrew, do you want to go first?
Personally, I have noticed different levels of uptake in different geographies. I'm not sure of the root causes of that, so it might be exactly what you're talking about. But I can resonate with how people can fear this as well. This is now getting into the whole mental health thing, and what are the issues? What if something rises up and we can't help? We're not support. Somebody's going to take us to court because they were on the mat, and it unlocks something. And my sense is to that. I mean, this isn't being blasé about it, but this is where the quality of the practice, and then having the structures around, it's not taking it lightly. It's like, look, if something's arising, we have many other kind of nets to catch or support people when that happens. Fortunately, it doesn't happen that much, but we have an employee assistance program line, which is external support. We have our health and safety practitioners ready. We have mental health aware. So we have the structures that I would say that that shouldn't hold you back. Now, in other geographies in America, that might be a very different, consideration.
Monika, I saw you smiling there. What were your thoughts?
I just thought it's so funny when Andrew said people sitting on a mat and then suing the company. It was just so funny, like, to think, how could you sue a company just for sitting on a mat? Anyhow, I just had the vision of somebody doing that. It's just funny. Sorry.
No, you go ahead.
Not just with mindfulness, but with resilience programs overall, including mindfulness. As we've delivered them globally, there has been differences in the sorts of topics or areas that resonate with people depending on their geography. So the spiritual dimension of energy is very much, it resonates a lot with people with our Eastern countries, probably because they practice it in their own time. It's not something foreign to them, thinking about their values, thinking about their purpose, meditating. And it was always a bit more challenging to engage the Western folk on those topics. So what we would find is that when we went to, say, India or Dubai, we would get people fascinated by going to the gym, and because it wasn't really something that they would have done. So there'd be the physical activity was more new to them, if you like, and it was the opposite when you come to the West. So whether the uptake is lower in the East because they're doing it themselves, or higher because they resonate with it, I think it really depends on the situation. For some, for example, like with mental health, we don't get a huge uptake of the EAP in the East. And that's, we've been told, is because a lot of people live in extended families, a lot of people talk to each other, they have networks and connections where they don't feel the need to do that. Whereas in the West, people are isolated, they don't have families locally, and therefore they are going to utilize the services. So it's important to get to the root cause of the uptake and then find out ways to address it. But we certainly do have differences in uptake according to the different geographies for all of our programs, I'd say.
Thank you, Monika.
That's really helpful. Thank you.
Thanks. Can I bring in Elizabeth? You've asked a sort of linked question in a sense. Would you like to ask your question to Monika first?
Yes, it is somewhat linked. If I can remember what it was. It's to do with the cultural and linguistic challenges, if any. And I mean, I suppose, you know, I'll be using English as the sort of global language. You know, I was thinking of Roche in Switzerland, where you have obviously German, French, and Italian as three national languages. Or does that not come into play? And then the cultural issues, which I think actually has just been answered about the geographies, depending on where you are and what the sort of regular pursuits are of people. But that could be quite an interesting question. Do people say to you, no, I don't need mindfulness because I pray at home, or I've got my own spiritual practice? Because, you know, that I suppose that could be an element as well. Is that a challenge, particularly in the East?
So I'll start with the languages. We have translated our on-demand series to several languages. I think we're up to 14, 15 right now.
Okay.
So to make it accessible to as many people as we can. We also train up our facilitators who speak English, but then they go and deliver it in their local languages. So that is something, and then they will then train up people in their own language where they are to ensure that it is sustainable. In terms of your cultural question, we don't really get people saying we don't want to go on it. We don't really ask people to go on it. So we don't really know about why people are not going on it. So I suspect that, yes, there will be individual practices. However, having said that, despite the fact that I practice individually, actually makes me want to engage more in what's happening within GSK. So it's a difficult one to answer because we haven't assessed it, but it's possible that people have their own practices and the people have different interests and different gaps, and they may want to develop differently. But often it's the people that come often practicing.
So it reinforces what's already going on.
I believe so. For me personally, that's the case.
Sure.
Thank you.
Thank
and
you.
Andrew, any thoughts about language and culture?
Yeah, we have global practitioners working in different languages, and our main business language is English as well. So when we meet as a community of global champions for this, we generally speak English. But if we're delivering courses, it's typically done in the majority language of the geography that they're in.
Great, thank you. Does that cover your question, Elizabeth? There were some other elements. I don't know if you wanted to ask those as well.
Oh, yes, the issue of performance appraisal.
So,
to what extent is management aware or following up on who's doing the courses and who's enrolled in a mindfulness course, given that it is, you know, it is vital for performance enhancement and so on. So does that play into management considerations and promotion, etc.?
I can give an answer to that. I don't think it's specifically addressing that, but maybe in a way is. So we moved to contribution rather than performance, a few years ago, and we do encourage, in that conversation to be looking at the whole person, in terms of the contribution that you're making, and that means also how are you developing? What are you doing for personal growth? And so that would be an essential part of any kind of discussion and feedback, and then ultimately conclusion about your performance for that year or your contribution to the business that year. So it's weaved in, but is it really a kind of like, well, are you, practicing growth and increasing your potential in many different ways? Oh, you're not, so we're not going to promote you. Probably not at that level yet, but it is being weaved in much more into, you're not pushing yourself, you're not challenging yourself, you're not growing. What can we, why not? What can we do? What is it, what is it that's really going to help you achieve what it is you want to do? So it's definitely being more encouraged in that this is important. You cannot ignore it. Otherwise in the future, you're going to yeah, you're going to fall out of this performance situation.
Thank you, Andrew. And Monica?
One of our one of our key priorities is to enable people to feel good. And so health and wellbeing is under that. So everybody in the company is aware that we, as leaders and managers, need to support people to feel good, whatever that looks like, whether that's mindfulness or whether that's training to run a marathon or whatever that might be. So those conversations, there's an expectation that there is a regular conversation between an employee and their manager about what enables them to feel good. We don't specifically, I don't know if I'm answering your question correctly here, Elizabeth, but we don't, so people that enroll in mindfulness, it's not an expectation that they mention that to their manager. That is entirely up to them. So a manager will not know, my manager doesn't know if I'm attending a mindfulness series. However, it may be something that I wish to bring up, but it's not an expectation or a requirement. So if the manager is aware of it, that's great. They can then talk to them about how is it helping them at work or at home or whatever that might be in terms of their performance or development. But it's not formally an expectation. It may be something that they've both spoken together about, and the employee may not even be aware of the mindfulness series, and perhaps the manager then raises their awareness and encourages them to attend. It could happen that way.
Thank you.
Interesting. Thank you.
Thank you for
it is interesting if I could just expand on that, because this is one of the huge value opportunities I think about. This is, we organizations are very, they have huge intent around feedback and reflection, and maybe filling out preferences tools or psychometric tools, or that give you insights to kind of your strengths or maybe your development areas. And for me, it's a huge fascination that there's great intent, but turning the intent into purposeful practice seems to be another step. That we feel like it's fine to get lots of feedback, and I ask for feedback all the time. Yet, so what do you do with it? What do you purposefully start to change about yourself or step into? And this is exactly the sort of area that you can kind of have that sort of conversation, because this purposefully practicing something, and the insight that's growing, or the awareness that you're getting, or the clarity or understanding your purpose, and knowing that takes effort and energy. That's a clear, to us, that's like, that's a great sign of somebody that's willing to move from intent into practice. And so I think you really touch on a great kind of future opportunity for lots of organizations that think we're a learning organization. You
have to have that loop.
Yeah.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Thank you for those answers. So a question from Ellie, and I'll just summarize, and my apologies, Ellie, I'm just conscious of time. But this was specifically to Monika, but maybe both could answer it briefly, around the, specifically during the sessions during COVID, whether these sessions were offered to everyone or people who had already got a language around mindfulness and had some experience of it, and also whether it was an 8 weeks MBSR style program or something else.
Well, Razia's on the call. I think Razia might be better positioned to answer that, seeing as she led those sessions. But yes, they were open to everybody.
Thank you, Razia.
Yeah, so yes, thank you, Monika. They were open to everybody, and they were it wasn't an 8-week session, and it wasn't in the style of the MBSR, the mindfulness-based stress reduction. It was, we've kept it the same, half an hour, but it was very focused about how do I deal with uncertainty times. So that, I guess, that was the whole. It was 6 sessions over 3 different time zones, but it was very specific, and there was an intent for that. It wasn't done just. The intent was because of the enormity of what people were feeling. So it wasn't about let's fix something. This session is going to fix you. There was nothing. It was how do we come to be with this enormity of what? And I guess it sounds simple, but the simplicity of that made it so accessible to everybody. So people could feel, okay. And I had people on the whiteboard writing, I haven't cried like this in a long time, just in half an hour. So and then I think there was something about, they were, you know, in one session, there would be 600 people coming. So having that number of people coming and connecting to that pain, the suffering, I think that's what made it powerful. I mean, that's that's my experience, but it was very specific. Only we offered 6 sessions, but then we followed that with, I think I wanted to say early on is what made it, the attendance keep going was the next series then after that was mindful movement. So all of them was about movement. So it was, okay, let's bring something else here. And I thought that was really successful. That was really good.
Thanks, Razia.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Andrew, was there anything that you wanted to say in that space?
No, only that we also extended into mindful movement as well afterwards, you know, to also reflect the change of working conditions that people were in as well. And that was really well received. So we have mindfulness movement and yoga that runs regularly every day as well now. So yeah, a great extension. Yeah.
Interesting.
Great. Thank you. So one last question, if I can ask, and I always find myself doing this, I do apologize. It's a sort of 30-second answer. Have there been any barriers to internal trainers, especially when it comes leaders being taught by more junior staff? And has there been a resistance to leaders being in mixed groups, being open and sharing, for example? And that's from Lorraine. Thank you for that question. Andrew, would you like to answer that first?
I don't know, Monica, do you want to go first? I need to kind of pull an answer together for that.
It's difficult to know about the attendance of leaders, whether what the reasons are for them attending or not attending. I don't believe it's a significant barrier. Maybe 1 or 2 individuals think that it's because it's run by somebody less junior, but having said that, it's not really about the seniority. It's more about the authenticity of the individual and the passion of the individual. So I haven't personally experienced that as a leadership barrier to attending because there's somebody junior. The reputation almost speaks for itself in whoever delivers it, because then people refer other people to it. They promote other people to join, and we know that from the surveys that we've done that 99% of people would advocate it to somebody else in the workplace. So I don't believe that is a barrier to senior leadership joining.
Thank you, Monica. Any thoughts?
Yeah. I think if a leader's got a problem with that, which we don't typically have in Roche, but I don't know. Not everybody's turning up. So I'm a little bit like Monica. What might be getting in their way? That might be. I feel uncomfortable with this. And also, it's typically the internal champions are seen as the experts. And it doesn't matter what level is kind of we defer to that expertise in this particular situation. So I can't speak for all leaders, unfortunately.
Well, that's a great note on which to leave the respect which is being shown for the expertise of the people who are leading your programs, which feeds to everything that you've said about sustainability today. It's been absolutely enthralling listening to you, and thank you for the wonderful questions from everybody. Time's beaten us yet again, but thank you for coming along. Thank you so much for your contribution, Monica and Andrew. It's been great to listen to you today.
Pleasure. Thank you.
You're welcome, everyone.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Everyone just want to unmute themselves to say cheerio.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Great session. Bye.
Bye. Thank you. Bye.
Thank
Thanks all. Bye.
Everyone.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye, Andrew. Bye, Teresa.
Bye.
Elizabeth,
Thank you very much.
Bye.
thank you.